Welcome to Mixed Mattaphors. So this one is actually potentially not even going to fucking be here because I recorded a couple audio files already, and yesterday I found that after recording one of them, it said something like, file could not be displayed, size was too large or something. And then I went to check, and as it says now, it may have said like 37 or something, but it might have said the same thing. What it says now is you can record for more than 39 hours. That wasn't a fucking 39 hour audio. Even I haven't done a 39-hour audio yet, all at once anyway, or for one episode. But I've certainly done 39 hours of audio. Fuck, way more than that. But anyway, you can just go to mattthoughts.com. You'll see more than that. But yeah, so this phone or this application, the app was pretty reliable on the other phone, so it might be the way it interacts with this phone, but something is not saving these. And that was after I had recorded one in the morning that was also, it was probably like 20 minutes, half an hour long or something. It's done. The one yesterday, the one I saw that on, might have only been like 10 minutes. Yeah, well, 10 minutes too long. Well, that actually, interestingly enough, I recorded another one for like 3 seconds in the aftermath of that. It was accepted. It's sitting there. The 3-second clip, the test clip is there, and it works. Oh boy, it works. And anyway, oh boy. I really can't take this life much longer. I hate my life. Hate it with a vengeance. It's like Die Hard with a vengeance, except hate my life with a vengeance. And I've never seen Die Hard with a vengeance, but now that I hate my life with a vengeance, it's, it's horrible. Probably as bad as Die Hard with a Vengeance is. I mean, everyone likes Bruce Willis. He's pretty good. He's likable. I don't know how good he is necessarily. He's pretty good in Pulp Fiction. But, I really can't stand this fucking garbage. And, I hope I die. Well, am I gonna get this fucking taken off of YouTube for saying that? Oh my god. So, I did a post today about, it's called Fuck You on mattthoughts2.com, and it's about, it's about having been through, like what might have passed for a whole life in the Middle Ages or something, like, 29 years. Having been through 29 years of I'll give you a little rundown, actually. So, like, 29 years, as A$AP Rock said, a lot of years, or not a lot, I guess, but enough years, where I was, I grew up, I went to school. Usually I got pretty good grades. I generally was fairly moral. Of course, probably when you're a kid, you're a little less moral than you might be. You kind of haven't sort of, the path is wide and well trodden, and then the path is narrow and few find it. You haven't found the few find it path, if you ever do. Maybe not, actually, or rather, you may have found it, but in any case, I wasn't, quite as moral back then, but, I think I was okay. I did all the bullshit, or I did, most of the bullshit, probably, all the indoctrination, all the shit that they wanted me to do, all the homework, or didn't want me to do, who knows what they want. All the, book reports. I hated book reports, by the way. That's kind of funny. Book reports were sort of like my, sort of like a phantom, like a specter in my life. And, but, I did that stuff. I got the science award in 8th grade, which was actually kind of funny because I don't think I particularly I don't think I had an interest in science to any great extent, nor do I think I was, I think I was good in science classes, but probably similar enough to how I was in other classes. But the science teacher, I sort of had a bit of a connection with the science teacher, and, he was a really cool guy. He was the kind of cool teacher where people talked about him after they graduated high school, about, remember, how cool that teacher was. He was the man. I'd put him, you give me your top 5 elementary school teachers in all of America. I'd say, put him up against this guy. He'd give a good fight, at least. It was like your other teachers were teachers, and then this guy was like a historical figure or something. He was cool. I've more than once compared him to George Washington or something, whatever the conception of George Washington would be in the Scott Adams sense. It doesn't really matter what happened in relation to historical figures and stuff. Like Scott Adams has said, it doesn't really matter what happened so much as it matters what story we're being told or that we tell about these people. So, which, I wouldn't totally agree with, but in a practical sense, however, people are acting around these ideas that have been built up about people like Martin Luther King and George Washington, or Martin Luther King Jr. or whatever. Yeah. It's just, so anyway, this guy was cool. This guy was the way you'd think George Washington might be. And he was talking to a bunch of fucking 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And anyway, he was cool, and I imagine he had a lot to do with deciding who won the science award. He taught the science class for those 3 grades. And And so I won the science award. I imagine he picked me. There was one class, I thought to say episode, there was a class where he said, this test is going to be so hard that even Mr. Havlin can't pass it, or something like that. And, he was a nice guy, cool enough guy. Looking back on it, he was probably pretty libby. There was some kind of down on America stuff, and, some environmentalism, sort of propaganda environmentalism stuff. Like some global warming stuff particularly. He once said that, when he was 90, he would, pick up his surfboard and go, surf on the last wave that, destroyed destroyed the town that he was in or something because of global warming, something like that. But you could get something from that, at least he was sort of a cinematic kind of guy, even when he was talking bullshit, to whatever extent that might be bullshit. But it was cool being in his class. And but then beyond that, I did fairly well in high school. I was in 2 AP classes. I was in honors math from from 8th or 7th grade, I think it was, through 7th grade, through the end of high school. I think I went to honors. I was in fucking Spanish too in freshman year. They had me ahead in a couple of classes. And, I wrote for the school newspaper. That was a class, and you took it for the whole year. And so I wrote for that as part of that class. I had my own column. It was called Matt Thoughts. Now I have 2 websites called Matt Thoughts, one of them being Matt Thoughts 2. But not TOO or TU, but TU, but 2, the numeral 2. And yeah, I did pretty well in college. I got decent enough grades in college, or marks. It's not teachers, it's professors, and it's not grades, it's marks. But I got decent enough marks in college. You take your marks and you listen to people profess. But it was, college was okay. I mean, college was the beginning of the end for me enjoying anything, but college was fine in terms of how well I was doing. And for the last 2 years of college, I was in an editorial role in a college magazine, culminating in being the editor-in-chief for that magazine for the entirety of the final year. And it wasn't just a couple students, it may have started out as really, I guess it would have been more impressive to start out as, to be the students who started it out. But, it was an ingrained college magazine at that point. I remember doing the fucking paperwork to get them their $16,000 of funding for the next year. $16,000, it's not that much, but it's not nothing for, the thing that you're president of. Literally, my title was editor-in-chief, but I was also the president of the magazine. So I was the fucking president of one of the larger literature or publishing-based school organizations, and I won Member of the Year. It was often enough, I think the president wins Member of the Year, and, so it may have been a little bit by default, but, nevertheless, I got the sense that some people didn't like me. One of the people I talked to said, oh, I'm Matt, and they were like, oh, the infamous Matt, and I was like, infamous, and they mentioned the emails I sent out to the organization, which, well, there you go. There's a sneak peek. But, I think I was just essentially those emails, I think I was just a little long-winded, and I think a little sort of creative and kind of an artsy-fartsy kind of way with them, where it was just bleh, or, kind of not outrageous, but, kind of unusual. And anyway, I don't think I was the best editor-in-chief, but I was good enough to get the organization through another year, and then to put up another person to be editor-in-chief after I left. That was sort of, I was like, if this magazine doesn't die with me, then, that's what I'm looking for. And, we we published 2 issues, passed them around the campus, like literally printed them, published them. You know, it was a whole deal. And you know, and they were magazines where before I knew that they were free, like I'd see those magazines around, or when I saw magazines like that around campus, I'd be like, how much do you have to pay for that? Like, it looked like a magazine that you pay like fucking $7 or $5 or $10, whatever, $9 for an issue of. And it was okay. It was, you know, well, no, my enjoyment of things went way down after leaving high school. Probably because I had all these friends, and then my mom moved us to be closer to the college, and I guess to a place that was less expensive, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't like we were that much closer. You know, the college was still like an hour, whatever, away from Rhode Island, rather than being like 5, 6, 7, or 8 hours away from New Jersey. It wasn't like the closeness really made that much of a difference. I don't think it did, you know, but anyway, yeah, so these, you know, these years weren't that great, and, you know, friends, you know, it's funny because I started the previous one thinking that this would be something about, like, friends, and, you know, I think the end of my enjoyment came with really the last of my friends, because, you know, after I started college, basically, it was, I never got back into the same, like, kind of life experiences with the friends that I had in New Jersey, and I never really, you know, it was done. Like, I was fucking done. My life was done. And yeah, and then after college, you know, I worked like a low-paying job after working like a job in journalism that was just way too fast-paced for me, and then I worked as a book editor for, like, you know, just over 2 years. I got 2 promotions within that job, ultimately being what my one boss referred to as the senior editor. The title was just editor, but she said, like, you're senior editor, or, you know, at one point she referred to me as that. And, yeah, you know, it was, you know, then after that, towards the end of that, like, I found, like, sort of my kind of OCD type, or like attachment or whatever type tendencies, they were sort of cropping up on me to the point where they were kind of interfering with the editing. And essentially, like, I know enough that I could edit one of those fucking books that I was editing. I could edit it today, and I think I could do perfectly. Not only could I do, like, a perfectly reasonable job, I think I could do a fucking great job. But I was sort of, like, feeling like these, you know, pulls and tugs, snags on me. Snags, in the sense of me, you know, sort of a spirituality type thing, where it didn't feel like I was quite in alignment, and everything was taking a long time, and it felt like I was sort of pushing against the universe to some extent, / didn't have the traction. And so, you know, eventually I left that job for, like, a couple little reasons, but that was sort of the main one, ultimately. And then I ended up getting a publishing job in California. I only stayed there a few months, or 2 months and change, or, yeah, I think a couple months and change. It was so fast-paced, and there was so much to get running with it. It wasn't editing as much as it was project management with a little bit of editing. And, you know, it was a lot to learn. Not an insane amount, but it was a decent amount to learn. And I was the project manager, and so it was a new position for me to be project manager of anything, you know. And yeah, so that could have been good. You know, I think I would have hopefully I would have eventually realized that I'm not a California guy, or at least, you know, the California culture they have today. But, you know, it was funny on the drive over there at a hotel nonetheless, and I'm working in the hotel industry now, but at a hotel nonetheless, like the front desk person told me, like, I said, like, oh, I'm going to California, I'm moving there, and she said, like, it was like a cute young woman or something, and she said, like, oh, you seem like a California kind of guy. I don't know if she was just saying that to, have something to say and to be friendly, or if she really thought so, but it's funny, though, because I would have a boss later on that would say, you look like a Democrat. Like, he straight up told me, like, you look like a Democrat, because I would talk with that boss and my coworker under him about politics sometimes, and so, you seem like a California guy, you look like a Democrat. Matt, how the hell did you turn out? Well, I mean, here's the thing, maybe things worked out about as well as they could have, because maybe for me to have reached the realizations that I reached in these years, this was the road to go down. Now, I could see the road being a little easier than this and having those realizations. Like, for example, put me with my understanding now back in the shoes of me back then, I wouldn't have been fucking sending emails, like, yelling at people about Donald Trump. Like, who gives a shit? Donald Trump is just as much of a fucking puppet as both people he ran against. Or all four people if you count the vice presidents. But, wait, was it Hillary Biden? Or who was Hillary's running mate? Clinton? Who was her running mate? Jeez. Anyway, her running mate was Bill, right? Anyway, so my sort of clingy kind of attachment stuff, my clingy stuff, it ended up sort of hobbling me. And so, here's the thing, though. That job was so hectic, and because of California's laws helping the worker, and because I wasn't making enough money for their laws not to say this, I wasn't allowed to stay late unless they paid me overtime. Like, or rather, I wasn't allowed to be on salary with the amount of money I was making. And if I had been on salary, I would have been able to, if I was on salary, I would have been able to stay as late as I want, and they wouldn't have had to pay me extra. But because I was not on salary, they were sort of, unless they were just going to not report extra time that I spent there, or I was not going to report it. Back then, I probably would have been like, fine, I just won't report it. But because I wasn't going to report it, or they were not, they were really pushing me out the door, and it wasn't like I was going slow deliberately. I was probably going slower than many people might because of the sort of attachments and stuff, but there were days where I stayed late, and it could have been sort of a fluke or kind of like a honeymoon thing, but there were days where I stayed late and I got the stuff done at my own pace, and I was sending out my last emails like after 7 p.m. or around then. It was fine, it was good, it was great. But, the boss literally used the phrase something like, you're pushing against a brick wall, when I was telling her, like, I just, I'm not up to speed yet. Like, I want to stay later to get my work done. You don't have to pay me extra. And she's like, we do have to pay you extra. And essentially I was saying, like, you don't have to put in the extra hours I worked, I'm not here to make extra money. I'm here to do a good job. Like, literally, I was there to do a fucking good job. And anyway, she just told me no multiple times. So eventually I was fed up with it, and I was just like, I'm not coming in. I'm done. And then, of course, one of the people above her said, I wish you would talk to me about this, she probably would have ended up giving me a raise or something so that I could have been on salary, or maybe we would have worked out some kind of overtime thing, but, or something, I don't know. But anyway, so I moved back to, the East Coast, not before at a fucking, I think a Thanksgiving, event. I was with my aunt and uncle, or my uncle and his wife, and, that's an aunt and uncle. I was with my aunt and uncle, and, we were talking to another, like, one of my aunts, my uncle's sisters, on the phone, and I told her, yeah, like, I quit my job, and she was just like, well, maybe, okay, she said it was a bad idea, to some extent, I guess it was, but at the same time, it wasn't like nothing, but she said it was a bad idea, and then she sort of, like, left me with, well, maybe you'll be homeless for a while or something, and, what a great way to encourage someone who, moved all the way across the country for a job that they ended up leaving. Like, what a great fucking encouragement. Like, oh, you couldn't have couched that encouragement in a little actual encouragement? Like, you couldn't have conveyed your message of disapproval and your sort of strategic message of don't do that with some kind of, like, encouragement? Rather, you went to, well, you might be homeless for a while. It's like, fuck you, fucking cunt. Like, seriously. So that really, like, shook me. Like, that was hard to hear, but I don't think it was hard to hear in the way that, she might have said that it would have been. Like, I think she might have said, and perhaps she even thought, like, oh, it was tough love, I was just telling him what he needed to hear, like, that was a bad move, and so, I'm telling him, like, there are possible, like, really bad outcomes for this. It didn't shake me like that, like give me a reality check. It just, maybe it did, I don't know, but it seemed like it just shook me in the sense of, like, it really knocked the fucking wind out of me. And, in a time where I could have used some encouragement and I could have used some understanding, maybe if she had asked me a little more, like, why did you leave, like, blah, blah, blah. No, just fucking, not only take the wind out of my sails, but cut them open. And so, I tried to sail around for the next few years with, torn sails. I'm not going to put it all on her, obviously, but then there was this law school thing, and, I was sort of just like, it was like, oh, like, it did seem like an interesting idea, and, blah, blah, blah. And I think it was partially, going off the fumes of, like, Better Call Saul and stuff, but I don't know if that would have been before I thought about law school or applied, but then I was like, this doesn't feel right, like, blah, blah, blah. And my mom was just like, no, you already applied. You spent the money to apply. Now you gotta keep going. And, she kept me going every step of the way, even though it felt like I was sort of doing the wrong thing. And then, of course, I got to law school, and I ended up leaving within the period where they still gave you some of your deposit back or money back for the first semester, because it was a bad idea, just like I said I was feeling, like 7 months before that, 9, whatever, 10. So, and then, yeah, so that was into my failure stage. Certainly, it was into my downward spiral career-wise, and then, of course, my mom was living in a house with her sister, who, like, wasn't really paying, wasn't paying her fair share to one extent or another, and, she was not being very nice to some children in the house that were, like, children that were in the family who were, like, living there with us, and she was treating them in a way that I disagreed with. So I was pushing back against that. She wasn't treating my mom very well either. It became this whole court thing, interestingly enough. There's another element. It became this whole court thing, and, it wasn't a huge court thing. We just, went to court, like, once or something, and then essentially we got the woman out of there, and the rest of the people that were adjacent or associated to, or adjacent to or associated with her, too. And anyway, after that, here I am in the house with my mom. My mom being there at all I considered it my fault, just like I really considered my mom's major stroke my fault. She's pretty much bounced back since then, but she had a major stroke after my first year of college, because I was really down, and I had a sort of a tumultuous romantic relationship that first year of college. So I was down, and I attempted suicide, just by taking pills. It wasn't anything like super drastic, but of course it didn't end up working. I ended up talking to someone, and then that person ended up calling like for an ambulance or something. And then, towards the end of the summer, my mom moved us back to New Jersey, probably, maybe even stating, but probably thinking also at least like, oh, Matt's really not doing well here in Rhode Island. Like, if I take him back to New Jersey, like, things will probably be better. And then, just after we got there, I think like the night that we got there, or the morning after we got there, my mom was in the hospital with a stroke, and she couldn't speak. And, that was years bouncing back from that. And so that was something that I, gave myself at least some of the credit for. Dubious credit, though it was, horrible credit. And then, I would give myself even more credit for her being in that house with her sister, because she basically, like, I had quit the job in New Jersey, the editing job, the book editing job, the publishing one. It was, after that, I was sort of looking for a new job. I was still at my mom's house. I hadn't moved out yet. I had stayed with her for like years to not pay rent, and I was paying off my college loans, which I did pay off, unless there was anything that I didn't realize was there, with the money I was making from the book editing job. And so it was sort of like, some people say like, oh, I'm staying home to make money or to pay something off or something. I stayed home to pay something off. And I did. And, oh, Matt, you're such a horrible person, aren't you? So then, but this wasn't great. So then my mom, my mom had been talking to her sister on the phone or something, and she was talking about the idea of like, oh, moving in with her sister or something. And I'm not sure if she had that idea sort of independently of anything else, but she said like, well, if I move in with my sister, then, you can stay at this house until you find a new job, and like I'll pay the rent for it and stuff. And that sounded great. I was like, like that seems like really nice. Like, I need sort of a break. I need kind of a breather after these years of like doing this and doing that, and just sort of like get back on a path that I'm good in or whatever. It was it was fine. But then, I remember there was like a Christmas like event we went to at like family's house, like in another state. And I remember my mom sort of like wavering, like, oh, I don't know if I want to move in with her or not. And I wasn't like telling her, I wasn't pushing her saying like, you have to move in, but I was saying like, I was sort of pressuring her. Like, I wasn't putting it in a you have to sense, but I was kind of pressuring her, like, make a decision. Like, essentially, I was waiting on her decision to see what things were going to be like for me. So I kind of pushed her. And then, at least one person had warned her against it, and she ended up going with it. Interestingly enough, I think the person warning her against it, like, that was part of like sort of a dramatic scene at that Christmas party, not really involving me, but involving like that person and my mom and her sister. And anyway, so I don't know if my mom would have moved in with her sister had I not pushed her. Now, here's the thing. Say my mom never moved out of New Jersey. Say she was still there. She had a friend across the street. She had some friends like in the pretty close area. especially the one across the street, she had friends there, but she indeed wouldn't have been as close to her relatives as she is here and in Rhode Island. So, to some extent, maybe she would have ended up moving here anyway to be close to a couple of relatives, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you could say, well, it turned out well because now she is like a little older now than she was, and she is close to relatives, and it's helpful that she is. But, I think that similar to the move back to New Jersey was a huge blow to my mom. The first one sort of health-wise, the second one, just the rest of her situation-wise. So, I'd blame myself largely for that one. It was very selfish. I was just thinking, like, I was like, it's really tough, like, living with my mom, and, if she's going to go live with her sister and I can stay here for a while and just, like, a house to myself, 2 floors of a house to myself, that was the apartment, so-called, then great. Then it's going to be so nice, and it'll be so great. And so I stayed there, and, she left, and, of course, it didn't turn out that great. And I was sort of doing a Jordan Peterson type thing, too. Here's the thing. I was doing a Jordan Peterson type thing. Like, I was sort of getting the house in order. And, like, I talked to my dad on the phone. And my dad, I said something about, fuck you, you fucking asshole. I said something about getting the house in order. And my dad's like, well, you shouldn't be wasting time getting the house in order. You should be fucking... don't worry about that stuff. And to some extent, like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, worry about finding your new job. But I was doing the Jordan Peterson thing. I think it was like early 2016 or something. I think it was before the Jordan Peterson stuff really became famous, and certainly before I was aware of that clean your room stuff. And I felt like I was sort of on the verge. I mean, it could have been illusory, but it felt like I was on the verge. It felt like, Matt, you're, if you just sort of get everything tidied up and everything, then you'll really, like, have sort of a good core base, solid foundation to go on with. And, like, from there, you'll move to your next step. But my dad sort of, I listened to my dad. These things where, like, people tell me something and it ends up, like, I end up going off in a certain direction with it. Like, that, I could have not listened to my dad, or I could have, said, like, fuck you to my aunt, and, like, not, like, had, I could have, like, sort of pushed through, maybe, emotionally, and not sort of succumbed, maybe, to what felt like sort of an impactful, shitty thing for her to have said to me. You might be homeless for a while thing, but in any case, I was like, all right, so I sort of went along with what my dad was saying, and, the rest of my life has felt fucking sloppy since then, of course. And so, not that, say I, like, ended up cleaning the house really good, like, really well. Would it have made a difference? I think it might have. If anything had changed, I think the probability of it being, like, at least a circumstantially better, or circumstantially more outwardly desirable butterfly effect from that, I think the probability is not insignificant. But, I went with my dad in that sense, in that one, and it and I.
She's such a bitch. You are too good.
Greetings.
Hi! Hi there!不可相信
Forgive me, sweetheart. Mother of God! You stupid motherfucker! Hello there. Forgive me. Fucking crazy. Look out!
Hello. So I thought I'd make the end of my video about just sort of doing a biographical section. I thought I'd make the end of it on video rather than just on audio. Plus, it's kind of nice. I've gotten to the point where talking in my other recordings basically, I think I want to find a calmer or more relaxed environment to do these recordings when I do them. So I think this will work for now, but yeah. So there I was out of law school. By the way, scholarship, I think it was 90% scholarship, the highest scholarship they offered. They mentioned someone in the, this new class of the university. They mentioned someone in that university as having been a book editor. And since I had been a book editor and I was given their highest scholarship, not that other people weren't given the scholarship as well, but it was, as I understood the situation, it was the highest scholarship amount that they would give someone. And so I don't say that to brag, but I just say that to say I'm not just like making this up. Like I will say at few points to perhaps at few points to going down towards the bottom of the curve of possible amounts of points, I guess. In the time that this happened, did I really feel that successful? Or did I really feel like I was doing it just sort of, I don't know, at best there was sort of like a sense of like easing of like, oh, well, now I'm editor-in-chief of this magazine, or oh, well, I got a promotion to editor, and, or, yeah, like for the former, it felt like maybe a little easing, like, oh, well, at least now I have something to put on my resume as having done in college, because I had some friends in college who were super, super productive. I don't know, basically, like, when somebody talks about, like, the people around you sort of influencing you, oh boy, I look right back to then, and it's like, they would be getting up, like, 5 in the morning or something to go off to their internship and whatever, and, or doing this or doing that, working in an organization that they worked with on, or worked in on campus, and they, to some extent, I think they became, like, essentially the presidents of that organization. So, like, and it wasn't like there were as many organizations as there are, like, people. Like, there are a lot of things. One thing you could say about Emerson, there are a lot of things that you can sort of get involved in that, if you want to gain experience, if you want to, if you have a reason that I don't cover, or even if you just sort of want something to look good on your resume, if you want to make connections, if you feel like you're just sort of spinning your wheels and all this money's being spent, or all this debt is piling up for not very much, and you're wondering whether you'll even have, like, a job related to what you're there for after you leave. And this feels like at least you can sort of talk with your friends in a sort of a similar level sense, because here's another thing. They would be getting up early in the morning, like, they'd be doing all this, blah, 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 and it wasn't like they're, as I was saying, it wasn't like by the way, that last sense that I was sort of building out there on the tail end of that list of things was me sort of describing how I felt. Oh, yeah. So, but to finish that out, so, whether you feel like you're competing with your friends or something, or not competing, but whether you feel like, well, you sort of feel like you're going to be left behind, like Tony, or like you're sort of not on their level, like you're sort of a third wheel, like you sort of don't belong, and not in the sense of like you're, like, it's antagonistic towards them, or at least not necessarily in the sense that it's antagonistic towards them, or like, you think you're better than them, but in sort of a sense of like, being, say you're at a party for, well, you're at a, I don't know, it feels like sort of like being the character, I haven't seen the movie, but there's supposedly the movie Pretty Woman, where the character is a prostitute, but she sort of like is dressing nice, and, she goes to the store, and like they say, we don't think you can afford this, or something, before, like, they tell her the price, or instead of telling her the price, well, we don't think you can afford this one, something like that. And sort of like feeling like you're sort of in a different class, and so they're doing these things, and they have all this success, and you feel like you're sort of in a different class, like you're just like sort of feeling like you're a burden on them to some extent, or you feel like they're sort of like bringing you along in their little social group, or the social group that you're in with them, but you feel like it's sort of like they're kind of patrons, and it's sort of like not even as much connection as bringing a pet along with you, because if you bring a pet along with you, you imagine that you're really a part of the little family unit or whatever. Like in the show Girls, and my favorite episode of Girls, actually, which is called Boys. Fantastic episode. I think it was the first I had, at least it was, I remember before I watched the show Girls, I saw like the ending of that episode before Enlightened came on, which I was watching. That was the show I was watching, but like I tuned into HBO and watched like whatever was left of that episode, and it was just this haunting scene of this one character like with this like sort of rough looking dog on like this sort of poor looking street, and there's this other guy with him, and he's like, well, what am I gonna do now? And the other guy's just like, I don't know, and then he just like walks away, and he's like, what, you're just gonna walk away from me? And I think essentially I think they had gotten into a bit of a fight, or just like he was essentially like doing it kind of as a fuck you, and like leaving this guy stranded in this environment that like he looked like Bilbo Baggins and fucking Mirkwood with. But it was very poetic, and like whatever was the end of that episode. If you haven't seen the show Girls, not only would I highly recommend it, and by the way, Girls, let's say in one way or another, Girls ends up seeming like a pretty pro-life show as well, so points to it on that front. If you're new to me at all, then I'm not a statist, so I'm not hoping for like better Supreme Court justices or anything like that. Although clearly these ones, I probably would have described as really good ones had I not sort of fallen out of the relationship with the governmental structure around us, being sort of like almost a romantic or an amorous one. Like, oh, look at the government. Look at what the government is doing. Like, oh, so you're sort of in love with it. It was, now it's just like, I look to them as if they're like a less interesting community theater group, essentially. Like just a group of people like playing roles, and at best seems like, I don't know if at best would apply here necessarily, but at it being the probable way that it is, so like even if the roles were real, I've moved to sort of an understanding that I'd be like, well, that's, it's bullshit. You guys pretend to, you pretend to have the divine right of kings, pretty much quite literally. What is democracy but a divine right of kings that has been supposedly bestowed upon one person by another person? So it's really just the divine right of the horde. But of course that doesn't necessarily, that isn't necessarily the way it is, because if it were the divine right of the horde, then you'd think that the horde would seem to have more control of it, but it really seems to be maybe the divine right of, sort of maybe like the divine right of co-creation with some manipulation thrown in, seemingly sort of swirling around a smaller group of co-creators, which you might know of, whom you might know as the aluminum Ducati. To throw out a Matt McKinley term for it. If you say that, I've written that term on a YouTube comment, like somewhat recently, like within the past week, I think. I wrote that term and they wouldn't post the comment. And I tried like a couple times thinking like, well, maybe it's just sort of a computer error or a phone error or something, a website malfunction. And then I took that word out of it, the word that one might substitute with aluminum Ducati. And when I tried posting the comment with that word not in it anymore, I think then was the time that it posted. You might say, well, Matt, no, it was computer errors. It's like, anyway, because they do have words, like I think probably a lot of people, whether or not they would refer to the aluminum Ducati or know what the hell I'm talking about, a lot of people probably would have had the experience, spent some time on YouTube, and they'll probably have the experience of having tried to post a comment and it wouldn't post, and then it turns out it's because they wrote something that YouTube wasn't going to allow in a comment. One of which words is maybe they're also referred to as the controllers, or the dark occultists. That's a Mark Passio term, or the I think. Melissa Watt, and maybe by extension Alan Watt, have a great term for this. Alan Watt having passed away, as the tale goes, but not to throw too much suspicion on there, but just, I guess you could follow most of what I'm saying if it's sort of making a claim about something that happened or how things happened. I guess maybe you could put at the end of most of that as the tale goes, but anyway, an ancient priest class. Melissa Watt and Alan Watt refer to this organization, Aluminum Ducati, hyphenated Aluminum hyphen Ducati, no capitals. That this organization, they refer to this organization as an ancient priest class, or at least they refer to like some of the people with this manipulation swirling around them as like an ancient priest class. So anyway, I'd say look into Alan Watt. If you just sort of call all this bullshit, just listen to any episode of Cutting Through the Matrix by Alan Watt. Listen to just any episode, or like the Redux episode that Melissa Watt posts. Any episode of Cutting Through the Matrix by Alan Watt. Listen to any one. But if you listen to a Redux, make sure to listen until you get to the Alan Watt part. I love listening to Melissa on those podcast episodes when she introduces them and stuff, but I'm not sure how appealing listening to Melissa would be to someone who wasn't already sort of interested in that stuff, and someone who wasn't sort of like maybe considering that stuff to be dubious, or someone who was sort of considering that stuff to be dubious. That might be a Freudian slip, or maybe it's just sort of pardoned by how rich the structure of words I was building was. But yeah, it's like I'm not sure how interested someone would be in Melissa Watt's introductions if they hadn't already sort of gotten interested in Alan Watt, or if they hadn't already sort of listened to some of this stuff before. You might hear Melissa, and maybe Melissa doesn't say things in the way that Alan Watt says it. I think Melissa is actually sort of a miraculously great follow-up to Alan Watt in terms of like just the Alan Watt material that has been being posted by her. Melissa is the widow of Alan Watt, and yeah, like I'd say if you're listening to a Redux episode, at least listen to the part where the guy starts talking in this very rich, very beautiful sort of European accent, or like European actually sounds like something else. This sort of, just like European, I think you might think more French or something more effeminate or something, but it's more like an Irish or Scottish accent or something. But he was in Canada, so it's sort of maybe got a little bit of the Frenchness in it as like layers of the cake. Anyway, Alan is fantastic, and if you would discount a lot of what I've had been saying, or discounts like right away the idea that there might be some kind of aluminum Ducati rolling around somewhere, then I would recommend you to listen to at least an episode of Alan Watt talking, or a Redux episode. But again, I would say if you haven't gotten to Alan Watt yet in a given Redux episode, then Alan would be talking about stuff that was similar, or really Melissa is talking about stuff that is similar to what Alan was talking about, what Melissa was talking about. Alan's being similar to what she's talking about, but he presents things in just this brilliant way. And any given episode of Cutting Through the Matrix, I think, and some of them are like really long, like some are like 4.5 hours plus, a little more than 4.5 hours, I think. Those were some of his later ones, but some are really long. But if you just listen to like 45 minutes of him talking, like, I think just sort of the sense that he's bringing up so much that is so legitimate, and he's giving you sources, and he's just saying all these, he's bringing up all this stuff, and it's so overwhelming how both damning it is to the people that he's talking about and stuff, and, you know, in that sense, damning, it's also sort of illuminating, but then also how, it's how damning it is to them, and how legitimately it's presented, just given his presentation style and all of the sources that he's listing all over the place. He's just quoting people and listing sources and telling you about what's going on, and it's really incredible. You know, why are you listening to me right now? Go listen to Alan Watt for a while, then maybe come back. You know, eventually you sort of get the gist of what Alan Watt is saying, and then it becomes a question like Matt McKinley might say of, you know, once you realize that it's all just sort of like, in one way or another, maybe a setup it may be, and then it's like, well, why keep looking into what's going on in the setup, especially when it starts to seem like it's sort of metaphysically evil, or metaphysically evil. I and metaphysically evil. I metaphysically evil. Matt, the first metaphysically evil would be fine for that last one. But anyway, so just to sort of illustrate the rest of what was going on, I got out of law school, you know, following yet sort of another, sort of more influence from sort of seemingly well-meaning people, in this case my mom, sort of more influence of like, you know, stay on this track, or, oh, what are you talking about, like cleaning the house and feeling like you're getting your bearings, or I don't know if I said that or if he said that, either of us said that, but, or like that being what my dad said, and then, or something along those lines, or like, well, you know, you might be home, I just quit my job, and oh, well, you might be homeless after this, like, you know, or something along those lines. It's like, or well, you know, things might be tough. You know, you're probably gonna have to struggle, or maybe she didn't say probably, but she's like, you know, you might be homeless for a while, or something like that. And she said it in kind of like a pissed off way. Like, it sounded like she was actually kind of mad. Maybe not pissed off, but it sounded like she was kind of mad. And insofar as she was mad, if she was, then maybe it was sort of, she was sort of saying that intentionally, hurtfully. I mean, I don't know, but yeah. So, you know, sort of like some influences around me, kind of like I'm withering, and then I get out of the. But you know, I'm not necessarily like navigating things the best myself in terms of, you know, it was a real shame, and it was a real missed opportunity to leave that job, and I could have definitely stuck it out, but in a certain sense, I mean, yeah, I should have probably gone above that woman's head and to her boss, and then me and her would have talked about it, and you know, it sounded like I would have had a different conversation with her. Like, she would have, in terms of, she probably would have, like, in some way or another said, okay, yeah, you can stay later, or, like, you can stay later for a while, maybe, like, you know, if you feel like you're sort of behind or something, maybe, then you can stay later, or, like, until you sort of get the hang of it, and then you won't feel like you need to stay later, and by then maybe you'll have gotten a promotion, maybe you'll be making enough, and you'll be on salary anyway, and it won't matter, you could stay later as long as you like, and, you know, nothing would be attached to it at all. At that point, if I talked to her about it, I think maybe the conversation would have been a lot, potentially a lot different. But you know, here we are, and so I'm sort of illustrating this to say, like, I wasn't making, like, there were other decisions that I could have made, but I sort of was. Maybe to a fault. Actually, my boss of the book editing job, I think she said I was she said I was hardworking to a fault. For a second, I was it. It it sounded like sort of like the thoughts of it sounded like honest to a fault. Maybe she would have said like you're honest to a fault, but I I think she said like you're hardworking to a fault. By the way, my lawyer, my second lawyer in this whole fiasco, he said, he said I seem quote constitutionally unable to hide my feelings, or maybe it was quote constitutionally unable to hide what I'm feeling or hide what you're feeling towards me, and you know, and also this guy in jail that I was like bunkmates with for like a short period of time. I sort of told the guards on him and his friends because they were playing D&D too late. Like playing D&D past the point where people are generally like not only quieting down, but I think maybe told to quiet down by the boss, the COs, the officers, the guards, the prison guards. May be told to quiet down, and then B, sort of like sort of enforcing on the other prisoners, not like in a really violent way or something, but sort of like there was sort of an enforcement of like prison code, like you take a shower every day, you don't do this or that, you don't do this. A lot of it was sort of cleanliness. I was in there thinking like, you guys are the biggest bunch of fucking pussies I've like ever seen. Like you guys are the prissiest fucking assholes. But you know, in any case, like there was sort of a weird like cleanliness fetish. I mean, it wasn't extreme, but it was sort of like girlish. It was like, we noticed that you didn't take a shower in the last couple days. Go take a shower. Like, we noticed that you didn't take a shower in the last couple days. Go take a shower. You know, like, what was this? You know, I don't know what, you know, I don't know if this necessarily would have had to be anything. Yeah, you know. That was a gesture. I'll take it off the video, YouTube, if that gesture needs to be taken off the video. That was a gesture of, like, someone fancifully twirling their finger, you know, like, sort of fancifully and sassily. Anyway, yeah, so, like, there was a code about certain things, and it was a protective custody unit, so perhaps that played a factor in how unlikely it seemed for people to be, like, actually, like, hitting each other or, like, hurting each other physically over these things. But nevertheless, there was sort of a sense of, like, intimidation. It's actually sort of, like, impressive, because it was almost, like, pure intimidation that kept these things, that people sort of enforce these codes with. And apparently sometimes, I wasn't there for this, I was in the SHU unit, the, you know, solitary unit, because I asked to be moved there, and then I was moved there, and I realized this is not an improvement, so then I moved back to the sort of more orange is the new black style, like dormitory style. It was like bunk beds, it was like a big sleepover in there, you know, and then a cafeteria that they called the day room, which is the most like, oh, you get to go out to the day room. It sounds like a mother like telling that to her 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old, 3.5-year-old, 3 and 8/10-year-old is like, the day room, yeah, I get to play in the day room, you know, like that's what they called it, the day room, with the 3 TVs. I don't know, I think they might have literally had white, black, and Hispanic/other on the TVs, like taped to them like labels. I think they literally might have had that on the labels. If they didn't, then according to my memory, they like, you could, if there's some way for you to like easily and legally look it up, according to my memory, in the prison handbook, it actually stated that there would be 1 TV for the white prisoners, 1 TV for the black prisoners, and 1 TV for the Hispanic prisoners. And I think the Hispanic one was named as the Hispanic and Others TV, but the way it tended to work out, it seemed to me that the way it tended to work out was like you sort of got to vote on what was on the TV within the group, whichever group that you wanted to be a part of, if you weren't white, Hispanic, or black. But I think the idea was, you pick one group and you stay with them. So, like, these guys are voting what's on their TV, these guys are voting what's on their TV, and in your group, the group that you've adopted, because maybe you're Asian or something, and I did have a friend there who was Asian, there were people, there were Asian people there. There was a guy, like, from India, and, yeah, so, like, there were, not to reveal too much about anything, but there were some people there, who, like, essentially, I think the idea was, you get to pick which TV, like, you're gonna do. Like, you can be on the white TV, but you gotta stay with the white TV. Or you can be on the black TV, but you gotta stay with the black TV. Or you can be on the Hispanic TV, but you gotta stay with that one. I would say, usually the black TV had the best stuff on there. They'd be more likely to be, like, watching a movie, like whatever movie was playing on a TV channel. And it would be more likely to be a fairly high quality movie too, like something sort of, maybe, I mean, how many things really are as good as Pulp Fiction, like, really, but in a certain sense, like, maybe sort of the type of movie like Pulp Fiction, or sort of like the quality of it, or like a quality of like Goodfellas, maybe, like what they were watching. Often enough, it was a movie of, like, the quality of, like, a Scorsese movie or something, like, on their TV. The white TV, they tended to watch shit. They tended to watch this, like, seemingly, like, sort of reality show, but it wasn't, like, a reality contest. It was just sort of, like, following this. I don't think it was maybe there were contest elements, but I think it was more like The Real World or something, but they were not just sort of, even that was, like, a contest, wasn't it? I don't know, but this one, like, they were just following this, like, crew of, like, some kind of, like, cruise ship around, and they'd be, like, entertaining their guests on the cruise, but then they'd just sort of be hanging around talking to each other in this, like, documentary show, and some of the women were pretty hot. There was one woman on there where I said to one of my friends, I was like, she's devastatingly hot, or she's devastatingly good looking. Like, there was a blonde woman on that show who was devastatingly good looking. And sometimes I would just stand there, or, like, sort of be looking over at that TV during a mealtime, or sometimes I'd just be looking over at that TV waiting to see if she would come on the screen again. And they were silent, because if you bought a little radio, you would tune it to the frequency of the TV, but I think they, pretty much the entire time I was there, I think they were kept silent. Maybe, I don't know if they ever turned them up, but maybe they were kept silent so that the people who weren't watching TV didn't have to listen to this TV going all day, which was kind of considerate of them, But anyway, I went through all that, and but there was this guy in jail who, he was, like, sort of briefly my bunkmate, and I said, like, I think I said, like, to him, like, I had, like, told on him and his friends having this little Dungeons and Dragons game, and it was like, it's after 11 and I want to get to sleep, and you guys are so annoying, like, I'm gonna go tell the CO, like, what, because I think I was like, how long are you guys gonna be playing this game or something, and they were like, what, like, I guess I was pretty confrontational, but they were also pretty, like, snotty, like, it's like, what, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and so I think, like, maybe not even responding again, I think I basically got up from my little bunk, or I hopped down, because I think I tended to take the top bunk. Why not? Top bunk's fun. You're up in the sky, But I think I, like, hopped down, and I was, like, essentially similar to as if I, like, stood up and said, that's it! And then I went to this officer, and I was like, these people... You're not supposed to be in other people's cubes. That was the rule. I think that was, like, sort of the rule. You're not supposed to be in other people's cubes after, like, the lights go off or something, or after 11. The lights didn't even go off until later on in my being there, because apparently earlier, before I had gotten there, at some point somebody had, like, thrown, like, an apple at the wall, like, as an officer was walking by or something, and I guess they didn't figure out who it was or something, so they turned the lights on. They were keeping the lights on all night, so it was just this, like, beating fluorescent light above you. It was horrible. Oh, but anyway, that wasn't so impromptu saying "oh, but anyway." Like while it was doing the do to count me in on this video, I was thinking of saying "oh, but anyway." But anyway, but it is just a cigarette that I'm holding. But so this guy, after I had like stomped off to the CO, and I was like, they're playing Dungeons and Dragons over there. You're not allowed to have other people like in your cube at night. Oh, and so I think I sort of got off on the tangent about the lights, because like the lights being on or off. I got off on that tangent because it was like, you're not supposed to be in each other's cubes after lights out, but I'm not sure the lights had gone out at that point. I think the lights had gone out at that point, actually, but sort of concurrent with my having been a bunkmate with this guy. And anyway, I led the CO back to the little cube, and I was like, here they are, or something like that. And he's like, okay, you guys, you gotta go back to your cubes or something. And then, it wasn't like very dramatic, but so they left or something. Or he might have even, the CO, I don't know if the CO did this, but maybe it was just sort of like something funny that could have happened. But he might have even turned to me and said, like, are we all set? Or something like that, as if to say, like, are you happy? Or like, did I do what you wanted me to do or something? And then anyway, my bunkmate looked at me and he's like, you're going to have a long night or something. And then I was thinking like, oh geez. And then he like kicked the underside of the bed, like not even that hard, I think, but he sort of like, maybe like sort of kicked it or something a couple times, or maybe even just once. Or like a series of like thumps, like thump, 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 or whatever, thump, and that was it. So, but I think at some point, like I was trying to de-escalate a situation with him. Maybe it was that point, like maybe it was after that, like I was sort of trying to de-escalate the situation. Now that I had realized like it became a scene or something, or I don't know, like, now that I don't know. I was sort of maybe then trying to de-escalate that situation, or maybe it was another one, but I think at one point, I think the lights were on when I said this to him, so it might have been another time, but anyway, at one point I had said to him, like, hey, like, I'm not like other people or something, and he's like, he like sort of like smiled, or like, he like smiled or like looked at me or something, like, sort of like laughingly, and he's like, I know, or not even like that, like it wasn't like an angry, he was like, I know you're not, or a little more attitude than that. It was like, I know you're not like other people, or something more similar to that. Like he said something like that, and like smiled when I said like, I'm not like other people or something, and something like that, and it was yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure what was that character. I used a few quotes. That was like the third one. Anyway, it's just, I'm disappointed. I haven't been the best friend, but nevertheless, I'm disappointed that during, like, I certainly haven't been the best friend. And the people I was still talking to, I was actually, like, kind of an asshole to them, like, an asshole to a raging asshole, in some contexts. Not feeling like I was I'm not saying this to make it sound like I was any better, but I'm saying this to sort of help contextualize the scene for you, or for me, really. Me, us. Anyway, it was not even like I was, it was not even like I was, Well, I wasn't being a raging asshole on purpose. I don't know. I think there's one of these earlier episodes, like the first 5 episodes of like these types of shows. I think it might have been. I think it was like a Matt's book reviews episode, but might have been like episode 5 maybe. But it's the one where I'm talking about the CDs and stuff. But I'm also or the music and whatever, and the Philip Roth book and the poetry, Best American Poetry 2023 collection. Is it? But I just oh yeah. So I think I mean there's a lot that I sort of identify with in the movie Greenberg. Or at least there's a lot there that I identify with having been like. And I've got to tell you, to whatever extent I was acting like Ben Stiller's character was in Greenberg, it wasn't so much. I mean, you know what? I mean, maybe it wouldn't really be fair to say that a lot of the more recent stuff was a Greenberg situation. A lot of the earlier stuff certainly was. But, you know, it wasn't like I was thinking I was in the wrong. Like, I thought I was being, like, all righteous, and I thought I was just sort of being, like, stern and, like, you know, strongly sticking to my morals and, you know, like, just sort of, like, a strict moralist and stuff. Like, I thought I was just... I thought of how I was sort of, like, talking with my friends at that point, and I'd sort of just, like, rant at them and stuff, but I think I felt, like, more strongly moral about what I was saying, rather than looking at sort of the context, because a lot of that stuff I would look back on and say, like, yeah, Matt, you were sold a plot of land in so many words, you know, you were fooled. But in other senses, do you like this Mr. Robot thing we've got going on here? In other senses, it's, I would look back on some of what I was saying and say, like, yeah, like, you know, you were generally talking about something in sort of an upright fashion there, but just I was being very antagonistic and stuff, and, and, you know, there's certainly, like, a couple, or at least one thing that I would really take back and saying, other than, like, all the court stuff and stuff, of course. But there's certainly one thing I would really take back that comes to mind, and then, you know, there may be other things as well. You know, I would have just overall reeled it in terms of, like, just... oh, like, this politics stuff is BS. Like, you know, this politics stuff, like Ben Shapiro coming on and, like, blasting you with this politics stuff for an hour, or, like, you go downstairs and your mom's watching MSNBC and they're blasting her with this politics stuff, and, like, so much of what they're saying is so abhorrent, like, just so dark-hearted, cold-blooded, evil stuff that they're saying. It was tough. And yeah, so, you know, if it were me now back then, it'd be like, whoa. At first it'd be like, whoa. I just went back in time. Just, yeah. You know, butterfly effect, who knows, but, you know, certainly I would have avoided years of just horrific fear and horrific, terrible experiences. Just years and years of horror. But then after that, I think I would have been like, all right, like, whew. And then I would have been like, all right, what did I say so far? Like, and I would have been like, oh, okay, it's October 2018. So that means I got the promotion at the job, and now I'm doing coding for the website. Okay, good. And, like, that's a pretty decent job to be in. I haven't been sort of promoted or moved to something else to do with the website that I was less interested in, and I ended up leaving the job because I just felt like I was spinning my wheels with, and pretty soon at that, like, okay, good, and which friends am I still talking to? Oh, okay, pretty much all the ones that had been talking to, actually. Like, okay, like, good, like, I'm gonna send some apologies, send some, like, all right, like, yeah, sorry, I've been getting wrapped up in this stuff, and I've been sort of obnoxious, like, really, really obnoxious sometimes, and I've been getting too wrapped up in this stuff. I've been throwing a lot of flames, and I'm sorry about it. And then maybe things would have been good. Then maybe things would have been different. And I think actually things would have been very different. And if I brought the understanding that I have now, say it was just as if here I am, but my surroundings are back then. So I'm walking around, I remember all the stuff that happened on this other timeline, and now I'm getting my second chance, and I'm going around, and it's like, oh boy. Okay, good. Oh, my albums, they're, okay, yeah, my Blatherworth albums and the Bruiser album, okay, they're there. Oh, I got my PS4, oh, good. And wow, this job's not bad, and, I'm getting some experience here, like, as I learn more there, I'll be a better coder, and I'll be better with them and for them, and these are a couple nice guys that I'm working with, and it's just going to be really great, man. And, but instead, so who knows, maybe I'll wake up, because Matt McKinley often asks on Quantum of Conscience, he asks or he talks about how he thinks that the answer would be sort of a no to the question that he's asking here or there, but he asks, like, he's like, well, if someone said that they could send you back and you're like, if someone said that you could be 20 again or something, but you know then what you know now or something. I don't know if that was part of it, actually. Maybe that wasn't part of it. But in any sense, he was like, if someone said you could be 20 again, would you go back? And he's like, I think most of the people here would say no. And in a certain sense, I might say yes, actually. But, here's the thing. So, just as to round out the sidebar here, here's the thing, or here's a thing. The me right now, I wouldn't trade for the me from back then. Like, sort of like the understanding, like the actions of, like, sort of like how everything shakes out. The me, I wouldn't trade for the me from back then. I wouldn't trade for the me from this era, like, when I was sort of coming up in the editing job and, like, things seemed to be going well, although I'd look around and it would still feel like I was kind of like a failure, or like I'd talk to people at, like, a party if I saw, like, an old acquaintance or something at a party that I was going to with a friend in, like, the Belmar, New Jersey area or Asbury Park, or, I'd talk to people and, I'd say, like, what do you do or something. Partly, it was, like, I soon enough realized that that wasn't something that people generally said, but, like, I was thinking, like, that was sort of like an adult, or that was, like, the type of thing that I was supposed to say to someone that I hadn't seen in a while, or, and, of course, many of them might have had, not been sort of satisfied or felt very good about what they did, like, maybe I work at McDonald's or something, but then, like, I'd say to people, like, oh, I'm an editor at a thing, and I'd say that, and they'd be, well, essentially, like, I'd say that sort of, like, kind of feeling like I was giving them my resume or something, and it's like, yeah, like, like, I'm an editor at, like, I'm okay, like, I'm good, which I think maybe I was sort of feeling towards them and around everyone with whom I was with, I think I was feeling with them, perhaps similar to how I felt with my friends in college, except now it wasn't, being around them, I was sort of starting to say before, like Tony Robbins or someone like that, when they say something like, well, you're rising to the level of the people around you, or like, how are you going to turn out? Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with, and that's how you're going to turn out in 5 years or something like that. It's like, being around them, and also the idea, Tony Robbins, in another thing, he says, like, well, a lot of people want to hold you down, and he's like, yeah, a lot of people might want to hold you back, and like when you're sort of like getting motivated and stuff, they might say, like, what are you doing, spending all your time doing that? Like, come on, like, why are you so serious all the time? And like, oh, you think you're gonna be some kind of big success? And like, people sort of say stuff like that. Of course, if you were to talk to a psychiatrist, they'd say, you think people are trying to hold you down, or you think people are trying to tear you down? You are automatically considered, officially and clinically, psychiatrically paranoid. But anyway, these people who might be like holding you down or something, he was saying, or trying to sort of kind of maybe pulling some wind out of your sails or something, maybe not even sort of knowingly necessarily, but like Tony Robbins, he's like, they feel like if they don't pull you down, you might leave them, like, or you might like leave them behind or something, like you might not be their friend anymore, or like you might leave them, and so, if people seem like they're kind of trying to pull you down, maybe it's because they sort of, they feel like they want to stay with you. And hanging out with them, I felt like sort of like the sense, I mean, we had an apartment together. Prior to that, we were in suites together. Prior to that, we were on the first floor of the dorm together. Like, we were near each other, but on some level it felt like, like I'm sort of lagging behind, and like I'm sort of, like it might have felt, I think on some level it felt like I wasn't like sizing up to them, or like I wasn't matching up to them, or I felt like I was sort of dragging them down, or like I didn't belong, like I just didn't qualify to be like in that friend group or something, or just, I mean, I don't know how explicitly all of these thoughts might have been, if they were, and if this is an accurate analysis of any kind, but it was like, it felt like sort of like, you're not good enough, or like, like you're sort of, in some sense, you're kind of like a threat to hold them back, or a threat, that's a funny term. You're kind of like threatening to hold them back by staying near them, not by like saying things threateningly or something. Please don't think I'm sort of metaphorically, figuratively or something, threatening somebody in the past in some kind of like situation where I'm analyzing how I was feeling about people in some past situation right now. Please don't send me to jail for what I for using the word threateningly essentially here, please. But these people, they were my friends, but it was like, I guess I just sort of felt like it was like, they're sort of the super team, and I'm over here, and like I'm just sort of like lagging, I'm just sort of over here, and it's like, yeah, hey guys, like, are you gonna wait up for me? Like, not angry at them, but feeling like I was sort of maybe cramping them, or cramping their style or something. Anyway, but would I trade the me now for the me from any other part of my life in terms of understanding and stuff? Why would I? It's like, I'd love to be able to go back and talk to me from any one of those times and say like, hey, like this relationship, it didn't work out very well. Like, it doesn't seem to be working out. Like, here's, if you sort of approach things differently, here's how you might mend the relationship, or like, here's how it might go well, or here's how you might get back in a relationship with her. Or maybe just like, just, hey, it's, if you're not going to be in a relationship with her, then, just like, let go of some of this. She's really great, and you are still going to be thinking about her even when you're 33. You're going to, still be sort of thinking like, maybe she was the love of your life, but nevertheless, and interestingly enough, I had a friend who said, like, in a text to me one time, she was like, well, you're acting like she's the love of your life or something, and this was after, like, multiple tumultuous, like, situations, and probably years after I had even, like, seen her, I had only seen her, like, a few times in years, but, or I don't know, maybe it was months or whenever it was, but I think she might, I still think today, like, maybe she was the love of my life, and I just fucked it up, and that's fine. Not that she didn't have any part of fucking it up, but in any case, like, I would talk to myself back then. I think I would have a lot of good things to say to myself that would be helpful in that situation. The situation, there are some things you can't take back, and, depending on which one of me I was talking to when, maybe there are some things that I wouldn't have been talking to him early enough to address or to adjust. But anyway, to get back to it, it's just like, well, on one level I understand why, if nobody stood up for me, why nobody would have stood up for me. I understand it. Friends and family. You can, a lot of the sort of thematic material that I was talking about, friends and family really, but it is, it's just, at the same time, I don't know if I'm going to take it down or something, but I did post the post "fuck you" on mattthoughts2.com today. In the sense of that, like, at the same time, it feels like, it sort of feels, there's a character in Mad Men spoilers for the amount of time that text is going to be on the screen, okay? But there is a character in Mad Men, her name is Peggy, and I'm gonna say it in a way to try to be less spoilery in case you're continuing to listen but you still haven't seen Mad Men. I don't want to spoil it for you anyway, but this character, a character named Peggy, is talking to another character. I won't even say whom she's talking to, but she's talking to another character after, like, years of knowing this character. After years of knowing and, like, spending a lot of time with this character, she's talking to another character, and she's saying over the phone, like, what have you done that was so bad? And I would sort of, like, it's like, in a certain sense, looking back on it, like, I see, like, there are certain things that I did that were, immoral, like, certain things that I said that were just, not great at all, and, like, certain thing, I was being a dick in many a way, but at the same time, I might also look back on all of that and, still, at the same time, be like, what have you done that was so bad? Like, aside from, like, a couple things that I'm not really going to get into, like, I'm not even sure how many things, but, like, aside from, like, aside from a little bit that I'm, like, not just not going to be getting into here, like, it seems like the road has been somewhat smooth in terms of just sort of, almost sort of like being like a model citizen or something, like, to some extent. And it feels like I sort of look back, but instead of sort of like someone saying it to me, I would sort of look back and say it to, like, a lot of the people who sort of, like, either seem to maybe throw me under the bus or not come to my aid, or, like, not spoken to my defense and not said, like, yeah, Matt's been a dick, he's been a raging dick, and, like, he said some, like, even some sort of alarming things this past year, but, like, he generally, like, maybe some people did say this, but I'm not sure that anyone said anything like this, and it's like, it would have been nice if someone, like, might have said, it might have been nice if someone had said, like, Matt hasn't been like a bad guy. It's like Matt hasn't been going out robbing stores. Matt hasn't been like beating people up. Matt hasn't been like hurting people physically. Like Matt's been like kind of a dick, and he's been, like Matt's there. As one of my friends once said, like there are many things I'd use to describe you, Matt, but that isn't one of them, or something like that. Or maybe he just said like I'd describe you in many ways, Matt, or something like that. But like I describe Matt in many ways, but what has he done that was so bad? Then again, just not to end it on that note, I'd like to also say that there have been people who really did come to my aid. A lot of family really helped out. Whether or not they spoke to my defense that much, I'm not sure. Or not, maybe not a lot of family, but some family really helped out. Also, my second lawyer was really fantastic, just incredible. And he was like, if you were to watch Better Call Saul and see like there's at least one character there's a character in Better Call Saul who starts doing like pro bono, I think pro bono work. Yeah, like she starts doing pro bono work, and she's just like she's a really effective lawyer, and she like really helps these people like who might be sent to jail for like a year and a half. Like she might get them out with like 6 months probation and like no jail time at all. And like she really is like helping people, and she's like my lawyer was like a real life version of her, even better, like just incredible. And then there was someone in the jail who really I won't say too much, just so not to reveal too much, but he really fucking helped out. And it wasn't even someone that I spent a lot of time with in jail. Like it was someone whom I didn't talk to very much over the time I had been there in one of the jails that I was in, and also someone whom I would have otherwise probably denied that he was even someone who liked me at all. Like it is I don't know, but he really saved my ass. He really saved my ass. And here's the thing: he didn't save my ass from something that I did wrong. He saved my ass from being falsely accused of something. In some sense or another, there was someone who really helped out, and falsely accused, or I'm not going to describe it that much, but he saved my ass in a really helpful way. And someone came to my aid. Someone helped me out a lot, and they helped me not be punished for something that I didn't do. It was good. And those friends whom I was talking about earlier, they... If they had been more persuasive in some ways in terms of like saying like, hey Matt, like yeah, but the politics stuff, like you think Donald Trump is some kind of like hero or something, like he's just as bullshit as like Hillary would be, for example. If they had been more effective in terms of it actually having the effect that might it have had, it wouldn't, I don't know, it wouldn't, maybe I would have avoided a lot of this stuff, but nevertheless, like, in their own ways, and not to belittle it either, like, in sort of like, revelatory came to mind, in sort of very big, impressive ways, they tried their best to sort of like, help me out while I was sort of like feeling like just very, very discouraged, and, also very just brainwashed by the media to some extent. Not brainwashed in terms of like not having had some good realizations that I would still point to today as being very helpful and even transformative and even formative, but it was something more like, it was something more like just getting really wrapped up in a bunch of stuff that seemed like play acting from those on high.